Um, this is May 21st, 2025, and I'm doing this video to introduce people who are interested in the Brett Jones case. My life's dream is to save Brett Jones, and I've been working on it for 20 years now, so almost. But this video is for people interested in that's in our story. And so basically just kind of a background on who I am, besides Brett's best friend and guardian angel. Been with him by his side since 2006. He was convicted in 2005. So I was originally doing advocacy with a grassroots group called Justice for Juveniles that tried to get some attention to the, first of all, the practice of locking children up for life without parole. That was our main focus. I'm trying to change that and mandatory minimums for children. And we had a website that had a lot of the juvenile life cases that we could find, and we put them up on the website, and we tried to get attention for those cases, and a lot of them were had a huge following of advocates and just people around the world that cared about these kids. But Brett's case kind of was just sort of dormant. It just was kind of sitting there. And when I saw it and I read about it, I just couldn't believe it. I could not believe this person had done what he was charged and convicted of doing. And it just really made me want to kind of look into it. So we had his case up there for a while, and it wasn't one of the high profile cases. So one of our advocates, who is a friend of mine, asked me if I would make a MySpace for Brett just to get some attention. I didn't know how to make a MySpace. I had no idea. So me and another woman in the group figured it out, and we made him one. And shortly afterwards, it turned out to be a good idea. Shortly afterwards, his brother found it and contacted me through MySpace messaging, and said, "Oh, introduced himself. Says, I'm Brett's brother. I didn't know he had any friends." This was, of course, after he was locked up a good number of years, maybe a year and a half, 2 years. And so I'm like, yeah, well, he's got at least one, me. So we exchanged some messages. And then the next day, his mother contacts me through the MySpace. And so we connected, me and his mom. And she exchanged information with me about the case. It was, pretty eye-opening, just hearing from a family member about what happened. And she sent me, I asked her if she would send me the trial transcripts. And she did. She put them on a disc and she sent them to me. So I read the trial. And I can tell you, when I got to the end, it was short. It wasn't that long of a read, honestly, for a murder trial of a child. It was short. It was maybe 50 pages. I mean, it wasn't even that much. And when I got to the end, I'm like, where's the rest? Where's the rest of this? Where's the rest of the, trial? I don't understand. It was just so obviously bad. I mean, the state probably had 15 witnesses And Brett had zero. I mean, zero, except that his lawyers put him on the stand. A 15-year-old child who'd been locked up in jail for 9 months, having seen no one. No one. His family, nobody. He was literally living in a paper gown, um, in a cell, um, for a child, because they weren't allowed to let him into the general population of the local detention center. It was an adult detention center. So he had to live in a cell by himself in a paper gown, no underwear, no nothing, because they said he was suicidal, of which he was not. But that's what they did to him. And he never met with his lawyer. He used to try to get his lawyer's attention by jumping up and down, because there was a window at the top of the door, like a little oblong window, and he wasn't tall enough. So he would jump up and down and try to wave at this guy when he heard he was there, this public defender that showed up at the detention center once a week to meet with all his clients that he gets $1,000 to represent. Um, you know, and never saw Brett waving at him, never stopped to talk to him, never did anything, literally till the day of the trial. And then they met, and he asked Brett, what happened that day that your grandfather died? And that was it. So that was the extent of his representation. Um, and, he was convicted of murder. Um, and, that's when he was shipped off to Walnut Grove. And anyway, back to the original, his mom had sent me these transcripts, and when I was done reading them, it was jaw-dropping. And I didn't want to, really get involved. It wasn't something I was thinking about doing. But after I read the transcripts of the trial, I just couldn't not do something. I have children of my own. I have a daughter that was his age at the time, and I just couldn't just sit by and do nothing, because a lot of the people on our website had not been convicted yet. They were still in pre-trial or stuff like that. So, but Brett had been convicted, and so that's why his case was just sitting there. I mean, there was just really nothing anyone could do at that point, because a lot of the other cases we tried to get publicity or lawyers, pro bono help, all kinds of stuff. And so, but Brett's case was already done. He was convicted, so it just was sitting there. And that's when I decided to devote myself to trying to, overturn his conviction or get some help for him, file some appeals or whatever needed to be done. At the time, I didn't know, because I was basically a housewife and a mother raising my children. And so I decided that I would have to get involved, and that's when I devoted myself to this case. And the first thing I did was figure out how to hire a lawyer. I Googled that, and I started with, it told me, go to the university clinics, So I, in law schools. So I did. I sent a mass email out to the law school at Ole Miss, Mississippi, University of Mississippi in Oxford. And they had quite a big law, faculty. And oh boy, was that the right thing to do, because I got a lot of responses. So that was really surprising to me. And I had recommendations. And some of these people were well-known lawyers in Mississippi that worked at the university. and I recognized their names and stuff. And the clinic there, they have a big clinic there. So I got some very good information about Brett would need to file post conviction. I didn't know what that was. All I know is that he lost his first appeal. That was automatic. The same lame ass lawyer that didn't defend him also filed his first appeal. And it was a joke. He didn't preserve anything but a few things, you know. So we not only did Brett have to go into his post-conviction appeals with very few preserved issues, you know, he had to he basically now had to fix what his lame ass lawyer ruined in his first appeal. So we were kind of behind. We were kind of, you know, we weren't starting from a real good place. But when I found out what I needed to do and got some recommendations for some lawyers, I started calling and finding out who I could hire. And but I knew I had to hire a post-conviction lawyer, someone who knew constitutional issues, because that's what this post-conviction is. It's a civil suit. And you are suing the state of Mississippi for violating your constitutional rights during your trial and pre-trial and interrogation and everything that involved the arrest. And so, you know, Brett's testimony was heartbreaking. That was the only part of the transcripts that involved the defense side. Most of the state witnesses were cops that violated his, never even got a search warrant to go into the house. They just walked in and collected evidence. And his lame ass lawyer had no idea. They had never gotten warrants, and they could have excluded all of that evidence that they used against Brett. But anyway, just, you know, I mean, the issues were, we were suing for the violations that happened to Brett. And the lawyer that I hired was highly recommended, and is a post-conviction lawyer. And so that's where we went from there. I contacted her and hired her. And so that's kind of just a little little introduction. Like I said, Brett's testimony was heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking, to see how railroaded he was and how awful it was to put him on the stand to defend himself. He defended himself twice. First against the mentally ill man in a rage who happened to be his grandfather, and second, that he defended himself against. And second, he sat up on that stand as a 15-year-old kid and tried to defend himself against seasoned, vicious prosecutors. But his story came through. It was loud and clear. He was believable, and he did his best to tell the story that happened that day. And when I was done reading it, it was heartbreaking to me. He was actually the most believable person in that entire trial. Seriously. But it you know, you can't put a kid on the stand like that to get raked over the coals, and to twist all his words and to basically tell him to shut up, you know, when he would try to explain his answers. Just plowing over a child. And of course the judge allowed it, because the judge it turned out he was corrupt. And so he didn't try to stop any of that type of stuff. The one time he did speak up and tell the prosecutor, Brett is allowed to answer the questions as he sees fit. Brett was too scared at that point to answer any of the questions other than yes or no. So, you know, they just really took advantage of an 8th grader on the stand. And, you, uh, it was just heartbreaking. But after I read that, I knew I had to help. So I'll do another video and try to explain a little bit what happened that day at Brett's grandfather's and grandmother's home. And so, thanks for listening.